Hi friends! In this video I want to share my latest project with you, a light summer blouse that you see in the video, which I finished not so long ago. Let me start by showing you the yarn I used. Here it is, it's made of multiple strands. The fiber content is 70% bamboo and 30% cotton. It feels incredibly soft and I really enjoyed working with it. For this project you'll need 3.75mm circular needles as well as 3mm double pointed needles. You'll also need a row counter, measuring tape, scissors, a 2.5mm crochet hook, a yarn needle with a large eye, and a few stitch markers. Now let's move on to the pattern. I cast on 96 stitches on my 3.75mm needles and worked 112 rows up to the armholes. Then I bound off 2 stitches on each side to shape the armholes. After that I continued knitting for another 33 rows, so by the time I reached the neckline I had completed 145 rows total. At that point I knit 25 stitches in pattern, then bound off the center 42 stitches for the neckline, leaving 25 stitches on the other side. Next I worked 52 more rows on each side, creating a tank top shape. For the sleeves I picked up 90 stitches around the armhole and knit them in the round. Of course you can also leave the blouse sleeveless if you prefer. It looks great as a strappy summer top too. So now let's talk about measurements. After I washed and gently steam blocked the blouse, here's what I got. Width from armpit to armpit, about 39 centimeters. Armhole depth, approximately 18 to 19 centimeters. Sleeve width, around 15 to 16 centimeters. Full length of the blouse 46 to 48 centimeters, but keep in mind it stretches nicely. From neckline to shoulder about 15 centimeters. Neck opening width around 17 to 18 centimeters. Sleeve length around 17 to 18 centimeters. Now let's get started with the front panel. I cast on 96 stitches onto 3.75mm needles using the long tail cast on method. If you haven't seen my video on how to do this, I'll link it to the top corner. The stitch pattern is already available on my channel, but I'll walk you through it again just in case. We begin by slipping the first stitch. That's our edge stitch. Then 2 purl stitches, 1, 2, next 2 knit stitches. Then again 2 purls, 2 knits. Let me slow down a bit for beginners. Just keep repeating 2 purl, 2 knit across the row. We finish with a purl stitch at the end. That's our edge stitch again. Always remember to count your rows. Now let's turn the work for row 2. Slip the first stitch, then 2 knit stitches, two purl stitches. Repeat that to the end of the row. 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls. And as always, purl the last stitch. Also make sure to keep your working yarn tensioned. This helps create a neat and even pattern. Now for row 3, we are starting the next step of the pattern. Slip the first stitch, then work 2 purl stitches, and here's the fun part. 1 knit stitch, then go 2 rows down into the stitch and pull up an extra loop. Then 1 more knit stitch and go back into that same spot and pull up another loop. Next, 2 purl stitches. Let's do that again slowly. 1 knit stitch, go 2 rows down, insert the needle and pull up a loop. 1 knit stitch, back into the same spot, pull up another loop. This creates a delicate decorative eyelet. Then 2 purls, and repeat the pattern again. Knit 1, pick up a loop from 2 rows below, knit 1, and pick up 1 more loop from the same place, and purl 2. Keep going like that to the end of the row. Finish with a purl stitch as usual. Now row 4, the final row of the pattern repeat. Slip the first stitch, then 2 knit stitches, and now we'll decrease the extra stitches we added earlier. Work the next 2 stitches together purlwise, and again 2 together purlwise. Then 2 knit stitches, 2 together purlwise, 2 together purlwise, and repeat that sequence to the end of the row. Finish with a purl edge stitch. And that's it, the full 4-row pattern repeat. So I've worked 112 rows this way so far, and now I'm going to start decreasing stitches for the armhole. So I slip the first stitch, knit the next stitch, and now I will bind off stitches. To do this, I take the first stitch on the right needle and pass it over the second stitch, leaving 1 stitch on the right needle. Then I knit another stitch and bind off 1 more stitch the same way. Pass the first stitch over the second stitch on the right needle, leaving 1 stitch. Now 2 stitches are bound off. That's exactly what we need. After that, I continue knitting the pattern, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches until the end of the row. Purl the last stitch. Next, I turn the work, slip the edge stitch, knit the next stitch, and bind off stitches in the same way. Pass in one stitch over the other and leave in one stitch on the right needle. Then I knit another stitch and bind off one more stitch. This way I have bound off 2 stitches. Then I continue knitting the pattern. 2 purl, 2 knit, 2 purl, 2 knit, until the end of the row. Knit the last edge stitch as a purl. I have knitted 33 more rows from the armhole, and now I will start binding off stitches for the neckline. I marked the stitches with stitch markers, 25 stitches, then 42 stitches, and another 25 stitches at the end. I will knit 52 rows on both sides. So let's begin. Slip the edge stitch and continue knitting the pattern. Where I stopped, I had 2 knit stitches, then 2 purl stitches. I keep knitting to the first marker, then I slip the marker and then start binding off stitches for the neckline. I knit 1 stitch, knit the second stitch, and pass the first stitch over the second to bind it off. Then I knit 1 more stitch and pass the previous stitch over it. Now 2 stitches are bound off. I continue binding off all 42 stitches this way. It's very important not to bind off the stitches too tightly here, otherwise the neckline will be too tight and look uneven. Try to leave the stitches a bit loose, but don't leave them too loose either. Find a nice balance. When I reach the second marker, I slip it and count the stitches on the other side. 24, 25. We need to bind off 1 more stitch because we end up with 26 stitches but want 25. Here's how the neckline looks, nice and smooth. Then continue knitting. The first stitch is already slipped, and then I knit 2 purls, 2 knits. 2 purls, 2 knits until the end of the row. Finish with a purl stitch. This is what it looks like so far. Next, I will knit the first front panel for 52 rows, then move on to knit the second front panel, also 52 rows. Remember, it's very important not to bind off the neckline stitches too tightly. So I've finished knitting 52 rows for the first front panel, and now I'll bind off the stitches using the basic method we've already used. First, I slip one stitch, knit the next stitch, and pass this stitch over another one. Then I knit the next stitch again and pass the previous stitch over it. I continue binding off this way, knit one, pass one over, all the way to the end of the row. Again, be careful not to pull the stitches too tightly. When I reach the last stitch, I knit it and pass the previous stitch over it. I gently pull the last loop a little to make it longer. Cut the yarn in the middle of that loop and pull the yarn tail all the way through. And here's what it looks like. The stitches are neatly bound off on the first front panel. Now we move to the second front panel. We already knit the first row of this panel, the right side, so we'll start with the wrong side row. I take a new yarn, leaving a small tail, and begin knitting. As always, I slip the first stitch, then continue following the pattern. For me, that's one knit, two purls, then two knits, two purls, and so on until the end of the row. I finish the row by purling the edge stitch. This is the second row, a wrong side row. I'll continue knitting the pattern for 52 rows now. So I've finished 52 rows for the second front panel. It's time to bind off the stitches in the same way. Just to recap, slip the first stitch, knit the second, and pass the slipped stitch over. Knit one, pass the previous stitch over. Continue this all the way to the end of the row. At the very end, I pull the last loop a little bit longer, cut the yarn through the middle, and pull the yarn tail through. We'll weave in that tail later. This gives us a neat, braided edge on both sides. And now the front of our garment is finished. The back side is made exactly the same. We'll knit an identical piece and then sew two parts together and complete the top. I've now finished knitting both parts, the front and the back of the top, and I'm going to sew the two panels together. I'll be joining them here, along the shoulders and down the sides of the top, from the underarm down to the bottom edge on both sides. Place the two panels right sides facing in and the wrong sides facing out. To do this, I'll be using a 2.5mm crochet hook to seam the stitches together using the chain edge. Find the first chain stitch on one edge. Insert the hook through both loops of the chain. Then find the matching chain stitch on the other panel and insert the hook through both loops there too. Now join the yarn. Grab the yarn with the hook, pull it through both chain stitches. Next, find the second chain stitch on each panel. Insert the hook through both loops of the first chain and then through both loops of the second chain. Grab the yarn, pull it through both stitches, and pull the first loop through the second, leaving one loop on the hook. Repeat this process. Find the next chain stitch on each side, go through both loops of each, grab the yarn, pull it through, and pull one loop through the other. Keep one loop on the hook. Continue like this to the end of the seam. Grab both chain stitches, pull the yarns through, and then pull one loop through the other. I've now finished seaming this side. Here's how it looks. You get a neat braided join on both sides. This is the wrong side, and now I'll show you the right side. See how neat and clean the seam looks. Now let's move on to sewing the side seams. Again, we look for the chain stitches, which are the edge stitches along the selvage. Insert the hook through both loops of the chain on the front panel then through both loops of the chain on the back panel. So you have 2 chain stitches on the hook. Join the yarn, grab it with the hook, and pull it through both stitches. Gently pull the tail to tighten. Then find the next stitch on both sides. Go through both loops of each chain, grab the yarn, pull it through, and pull one loop through the other. Let's do that again. Insert the hook through the next chain on one panel, then the chain on the other panel, grab the yarn, pull it through both, and pull one loop through the other. Keep going like this until you reach the underarm. I'll keep working a few more stitches with you so you can follow along. If you already understand the technique, feel free to skip ahead. Here's how the seam looks, very neat and nearly invisible. So continue like this up to the underarm. Once I've finished, I pull the last loop a little longer and cut the yarn, leaving a small tail that will weave in later. Let's take one more look at the seam. On the wrong side, it looks very tidy, and on the right side, it also looks clean and professional. Now I'll show you how to weave in the yarn tails on the wrong side of your work. For this, you'll need a yarn needle with a large eye and a pair of scissors. First, thread the tail into the needle. Then find the seam on the wrong side, the little braid or chain stitch we made while seaming. Insert the needle under one loop of the braid, then twist the needle slightly and insert it under the next loop. Keep doing this, twist and slide the needle under the next loop. Repeat this a few times. Once several loops are on the needle, pull the yarn all the way through. Now turn your work and repeat the same process going the other direction. This way the yarn is well secured. After going back through the braid the second time, pull the yarn through and cut off the excess, leaving a small tail. That short end will disappear completely once you wash and block the top, and it'll stay in place even more securely. Here's how it looks. Let me show it again. Thread the needle through the braid loops using a kind of spiral motion. Pull the yarn through. Turn the work. And repeat on the other side of the braid. Pull the yarn through again. Snip the tail, and you're done. The yarn tail is nearly invisible on the wrong side and completely invisible on the right side. The seam on the right side looks perfectly neat, no loose ends visible at all. Now I want to tell you how I made the sleeves. They turned out not too long, just the way I wanted. I picked up the stitches from the armhole using my 3.75mm circular needles. To start picking up stitches from the armhole, take your yarn and find the braid or the edge stitch. Insert the needle through both loops of the braid and pull through a new stitch. Along the armhole edge, we'll pick up 1 stitch per braid. So find the next braid, insert your needle through both loops, yarn over and pull up another stitch. Then start picking up stitches from the bar between 2 braids, the horizontal strand connecting them. To do this, insert the needle into the strand and pull up a stitch. Let's do that again. Find the strand between 2 stitches. Insert the needle between the strands, yarn over and pull up a loop. Repeat this all the way around the armhole. I'll meet you again once all stitches are picked up. So all stitches have been picked up. Now I have a total of 90 stitches. I marked the beginning of the round with a yellow stitch marker, and I also marked the center of the sleeve seam with another yellow marker. Next, I needed to calculate the width of my shoulder. I placed blue markers to mark the shoulder width. For me, that's 12 stitches to the left and 12 stitches to the right from the yellow marker. You can use a measuring tape to measure your own shoulder and calculate how many stitches that would be for you. Now we begin knitting from the beginning of the round, yellow marker, knitting across to the first blue marker, past the yellow marker, and to the second blue marker. The second blue marker is where we stop. So let's begin. To make it easier to work, I find the middle of the round near the seam, pull the cable through to make a loop, like a magic loop method, slide all stitches to the needle tips and start knitting. I'll knit the sleeve in stockinette stitch in short rows. At first, knit all stitches until you reach the first blue marker. Knit past the first blue marker, slip it, then knit past the yellow marker, the center, and continue knitting until the second blue marker. So we don't have to keep slipping the center marker all the time, I'll move it one stitch down. Then, knit the last stitch before the blue marker, remove the marker, we don't need it anymore, and now wrap the next stitch with working yarn. For that, move the yarn to the front, slip the next stitch, and then wrap the stitch by bringing the yarn to the back again. This is how we wrap the stitch. Now turn your work. Slip the wrapped stitch without knitting it and purl all the way back to the second blue marker. Once you reach that marker, purl the stitch before it, remove the marker, and now again wrap the next stitch. This time move the yarn to the back, the right side, slip the stitch, bring the yarn to the front again, and you've now wrapped the stitch from the right side to the wrong side. Turn your work again, slip the wrapped stitch, and knit all the way to the wrapped stitch on the other side. When you reach it, knit the wrapped stitch, then again wrap the next stitch as before, bring the yarn to the front, slip the stitch, move the yarn to the back to wrap it, and turn your work. Repeat. Slip the wrapped stitch and purl all the way back to the next wrapped stitch on the opposite side. Once you reach it, purl the wrapped stitch, then again wrap the next one, this time by bringing the yarn to the back, slipping the stitch and wrapping it to the front. Turn your work. And we continue like this, knitting short rows and wrapping the outer stitches one by one. To know how far to go with the short rows, I looked at the armhole and counted 4 stitches from the beginning of the round in each direction. This is the width of my underarm. I marked these spots with green markers. 4 stitches to the left and 4 to the right. So we'll continue working in short rows until we reach these green markers, wrapping 1 stitch at a time as described. So this is how my sleeve looks so far. Neat and beautiful on both sides. I have 1 stitch left before each of the green markers I placed at the underarm. Let's continue knitting up to the stitch right before the green marker. We slip that stitch and wrap it from the right side to the wrong side. Then we turn the work slip the wrapped stitch without knitting it and continue knitting in stockinette. When we reach the last stitch before the other green marker, again we slip it and wrap it from the right side to the wrong side. Turn the work again. Slip the wrapped stitch and continue purling. Once again, I've reached the last stitch before the green marker. This time I knit it, remove the marker, we don't need it anymore, and continue knitting the 4 stitches I had left after the marker. Now a small tip. I noticed a small gap, a hole, and I want to close it. To close the hole, I go 1 row down, pick up a stitch below on the left needle, like this, and then knit 2 stitches together. That's how I closed the gap. As you can see, the hole is now invisible. Next, I continue knitting all the remaining stitches. I moved all the stitches to the left needle, and I noticed another small hole. I fix it the same way. I pick up a stitch from the row below and knit 2 stitches together. Then I keep knitting all the stitches in the round. I continue working the sleeve in stockinette stitch in the round, and here's how it looks in the end. The gaps are minimized, the transition is smooth, and the sleeve looks clean and beautiful. Next, I knit 3 more rounds in stockinette, and then I start binding off the stitches. I knit the first stitch, then the second, and pass the first stitch over the second. This is how I start binding off. I'll bind off all stitches using this method. So again, knit the next stitch and pass the previous one over it. That's 2 stitches bound off. Continue this way. Knit, pass one over the other, all the way around. A reminder, don't bind off too tightly. If you want your sleeve to stay comfortable and not pinch the arm, keep your tension loose while binding off. Continue binding off in the round. When you reach the last stitch, bind it off the same way. Pull the yarn through, leave a little longer tail, and cut the yarn. Now we need to weave in the yarn tail on the wrong side. Thread the yarn onto a needle, find the last chain stitch on the edge and the one at the beginning. Pass the needle through the braid to form a neat finish. Then pass the needle to the wrong side. To weave in the end, thread it through the edge braid on the inside. Wrap it in a spiral motion. Pull the thread through. Turn the work and repeat the same in the other direction. Finally, trim the yarn, leaving a small tail. And here's how our sleeve looks. Neatly bound off, no holes, and with a beautiful tidy shape. So I've completely finished knitting the garment, and now I want to finish the neckline. For this, I decided to use a slightly thicker crochet hook, 3.5 millimeters. Let's get started. Take the yarn, leaving a small tail. Find the edge chain stitch, the edge braid, and insert the hook through both loops of the braid. Grab the yarn and pull through a loop. Insert the hook into the next braid, through both loops again, and pull through another loop. Now you have 2 loops on the hook. Next, grab the yarn again and pull it through both loops on the hook, tightening the edge a little. Continue. Insert the hook into both loops of the braid, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through both loops. This creates a small decorative gap and a clean edge. Keep repeating. Hook into the braid, pull through a loop, yarn over, and pull through both loops. Repeat this all the way around the neckline. Here's how the finished edge looks: a beautiful pattern, neat small holes, and a clean neckline. When you've crocheted from the shoulder to the beginning of the hole, take note. The braid here is a little tighter than at the shoulder, so instead of crocheting into the braid, we'll pick up loops from the row below. Insert the hook under the braid. Grab the yarn and pull it through both loops on the hook. Again, look for a small hole in the row below. Insert the hook under the braid and pull the yarn through both loops. Repeat. Find the next hole below, insert the hook, pull up a loop, and pull it through both loops on the hook. Here's how it looks as we approach the end of the neckline. There is a small nuance. When we reach the edge of the bound of stitches, we may get a small hole. To close it, grab one side of the hole with a hook, pull the yarn and twist it to form a new loop. Let me show you that again. Insert the hook into the first loop and then into the newly twisted one. Yarn over and pull through all parts of the stitch. This closes the hole nicely. Continue crocheting along the edge braid until the end. When I've finished the neckline, I pull out the final loop, cut the yarn in the middle, and pull the end through. Now we need to weave in the yarn tail. Thread the end onto a needle and bring it to the wrong side by inserting the needle through the center of the edge braid. This helps close the final loop. Then weave in the tail in the usual way. So the neckline is now finished using a crochet hook. Next, I want to gather the center of the neckline to make a bow. To make the bow, I'll use the I-cord technique with the same needles I used for the main project. Cast on 3 stitches, leaving a small tail. Then slip the stitches from the right needle back to the left. Keep the working yarn on the left side and start knitting. Knit the first stitch, knit the second, knit the third. Pull the yarn tight, slip the stitches back to the left needle again, and repeat. Always knit all 3 stitches. Slip them back and continue. The working yarn always stays on the left. This creates a smooth I-cord. Continue until the cord measures about 37 centimeters. Then bind off the 3 stitches using a regular bind off, leave a small tail, and thread it onto a needle. Now we need to find the center of the neckline. I count the braids here, and this one marks the center. To form the bow, insert the needle from the right side to the wrong side at the top of the neckline. Then go from the wrong side to the right side through a nearby hole. Continue threading the cord through the holes, back and forth. Right side to wrong side, then wrong side to right side. It's like lacing up. I threaded the I-cord through 10 holes, and now I tighten both ends evenly and tie a bow in the center. To hide the ends, thread them onto a needle and hide them inside the I-cord, either in the usual way or by threading through the center and trimming the excess. That's how we get a beautiful bow in the center. Now I also need to make 2 I-cord ties for the back of the garment. Let me show you another method of making an I-cord using double pointed needles instead of circular ones. I take 3mm double pointed needles and cast on 3 stitches. Instead of slipping stitches to the other needle, I simply slide the stitches to the other end of the same needle, so the working yarn stays on the left. Then I knit all 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3. Again, I slide the needle to the other side, yarn stays left, and knit all 3 stitches. Repeat. Slide, knit 3 stitches, slide, knit 3 stitches, and the I-cord continues to grow. Here's what it looks like so far. I knit a cord about 55 centimeters long. Now I'll attach it to the back shoulder area of the garment. To do this, I find the edge braid at the back shoulder, where I crocheted earlier, and pick up 3 edge stitches with a double pointed needle, just next to the seam. 1, 2, 3, 4, Now on my other needle with the I-cord, I slip those 3 stitches onto the left needle, keeping the working yarn on the left between the stitches. I start knitting. Knit 1, knit 2, and for the 3rd stitch, knit it together with the first of the picked up stitches. Then slip all 3 stitches back to the left needle and repeat. Knit 1, knit 2, knit the 3rd together with the next picked up stitch, and repeat. This way the I-cord is joined directly to the garment. Then I bind off the remaining 3 stitches the usual way. Knit 1, knit the 2nd, and pass 1 stitch over the other. Knit the last stitch and pass 1 stitch over the other. And pull it through, leaving a small tail. Cut the yarn, thread it into a needle, and bring it to the wrong side to weave it in. Let me show you again. I thread it into the edge braid, wrap the yarn around the needle like a spiral, pull it through, flip the work, do the same from the other side, and trim the end. This is how the back of the garment looks. I'll tie a small bow that hangs down the back. After I attached both cords to the back, I noticed some floats, loose strands, that I also wanted to hide. To do that, I took a small piece of yarn, threaded it into a needle, and pulled the float from the right side to the wrong side, then wove in the yarn spiral style on the inside. Then I pulled the loose end to the wrong side and secured it in the same way as before. Now there are no more visible floats. Everything is neatly tucked in on the inside. That's it, guys. This is how my blouse looks like. I really love the bows in the front and in the back. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Please comment, like, and subscribe. See you in the next videos.